Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome to your first e-lecture of physics. Let's start off with our first topic, which is dynamics, and chapter number 3, which is dynamics, and first topic of force. Let's talk about what force is. I've made these notes myself, and you'll be getting these notes. So, if you want to write them down, that would be great because that will help you in remembering all this. But you can also get the PDF. I'll post the PDF on the WhatsApp groups. So let's talk about what is force. Force, it is pull or push on an object that changes or tends to change the state of rest or uniform motion of that object. In physics, it is important that you realize that everything that pulls or pushes an object is not classified as force. You have to understand the difference. In physics, force is only applied when an object changes its state of motion from rest to moving, or if it's moving from with uniform motion. Uniform motion means that the speed is constant. Like an object is moving at 20 meters per second, and after some time it is again moving at 20 meters per second, and that speed did not change, and then a force was applied to the object and the speed went from 20 to 30 meters per second, then we say force was applied. All right, it is very important that you understand that force is only applied when the speed or velocity or motion of a body changes. Also, we'll discuss in effects of forces, which is coming up next, what exactly is what are the different effects of forces. Let's talk about them. First, force can change the shape of a body. We see examples of this, and let's say the plasticine that you used to use when you were little, or maybe you're using it right now. You apply some force on that, and the material, the shape of the body changes. That is an effect of force. Next, force can stop a moving body. Again, very important. Force, if we didn't, what force causes that? It's friction force, and we'll discuss it in detail later on. But if there was no friction, you would never be able to stop a moving body. And friction is the reason that you can stop moving objects. So next, force can set the body in motion. Again, we talked about this. If a body is at rest, if an object is at rest, and you apply some force and the object starts moving, that means force was applied. So, third point, force can set the body in motion. Next, force can accelerate a body, and let's talk about the next point with this one. Force can decelerate a body. So we understand if we are stopping an object, we are actually decelerating it, and there's a force that's being applied. So force can accelerate a body. एक body को वो motion के अंदर ला सकती है. It can accelerate a body and it can decelerate a body. And lastly, and very important, force can change the direction of a moving body. So from here we understand that force is also applied when the direction of a body changes. So this makes force a vector quantity. We understand that vectors have two properties. They have scalars, and there are scalars and vectors. Scalars have magnitude only. Examples of scalars are distance, speed, time. But vectors have magnitude and direction. We've talked about this in detail previously. So force has the first thing, a magnitude and direction. And if a body is moving with constant speed but the direction of the body is changing, then there must have been a force that was applied to that body. So if in exams there is a question that's been asked which says a body is moving with constant speed but it is changing its direction, is force applied or not? Yes, force is being, the answer is yes, force is being applied because the body is changing direction. All right, we've talked about the first two topics, force and effects of forces. I could ask you guys what are the different effects of forces in the paper, but in the Cambridge paper, the questions are not that easy. They asked a little more conceptual questions, but we'll get to them when your understanding of the topic is a little better. Okay, moving on. Types of forces and their description. First of all, we have force of gravity. We experience this force all the time. Earth, we know, has a force of gravity that is pulling us towards the earth. Let's talk about the description. The pull of earth on an object. So the object could be anything, anything. The fact that we're all grounded is because of force of gravity. Uh, that we know, the force of gravity has the acceleration due to gravity is 10 meters per second square. uh, we've already discussed this. Next, force of gravitation description: force of attraction between any two objects in the universe. uh, Students, force of gravitation is not that important in O levels. You'll get questions here and there, but in A levels, this is discussed in much more detail. So we could, for the most part, skip this one. You just have to understand that whenever there are two masses present, they experience some gravitational pull towards each other because that's the nature of a matter. All right. So, and this force, even human beings experience this force, but it's very minuscule. That's why you don't experience it that much. But planets and stars, masses which have huge, huge, huge magnitude, they experience this force um, in significance. All right, moving on. Third force, tension. Very, very important. This is not the tension that we take here. This is the tension that, okay, we'll talk about it. Let's read the description first. Force experienced by stretched or compressed objects. So when we're talking about tension, it's basically we're talking about two things: a rope with which anything is being held, or a spring. When you compress a spring or when you expand a spring, it has some force of tension. All right. Let's say this pen is has a mass hanging to it, and that mass is not falling. Why? Because there's a force of tension that is being applied by the rope, and it is holding the pen. What force is making the pen fall down? That's force of gravity. So gravity is being opposed by force of tension, and that is why this system is in equilibrium. What this means, we'll talk about this in detail. Don't worry about this. Let's move on first. Next is force of friction. Force of friction is very, very, very important. It is the reason that a lot of things are happening in the universe, and we'll talk about this in detail in this chapter. Let's talk about the description. Contact force which opposes the motion of body due to roughness of surface. Students, friction is happening all around us and we don't even notice it. The fact that I'm able to hold this pen is because of friction. There is friction between my fingers and the surface of this pen. If it were uh, if the surface was a little more rough, I'd be able to hold this pen very, very easily. If the surface was very polished and my fingers were a little less grippy, then it would have been very difficult to hold this pen. Again, friction is very important for our course in O levels, and we'll talk about this in detail further on. Next, let's talk about resistance. Resistance, the description of resistance is when a body is dragged through a fluid, there is a resistance, a friction between body and fluid called as resistance or viscous fluid. Students, resistance is something that we'll study in chapter 22 or 23 in detail whenever we start electricity. So for now, it is not that important, and you just have to understand the resistance is due to the fact that a body is being dragged in a liquid, and those water molecules have friction and they cause resistance. Air has also some resistance. When a body is moving quickly through the air, there is some resistance experienced by the body. So all these types of resistances are there, and it's a force. We'll talk about this in detail. Next is contact or normal force. Very important, and we don't even realize. आज से पहले you wouldn't even know that this force existed. Contact force, when an object is made in contact with the surface, then the reaction force of that surface is called the contact force. Let's say my hand is a table, okay, for simplicity's sake, and this pen is resting on the table. Please don't fall. So this pen is resting on the table. The pen wants to fall down. Why? Because force of gravity. It wants the pen to fall down. But there's a normal force acting on the pen because of my hand, and this normal force is acting upwards. The force of the pen is acting downwards. All right. So normal contact force, when I'll give you questions for this topic, you'll understand it way better. But just understand that if something is resting on a table, uh, or moving on a table, or a road, for that matter, the force opposing the weight of the object, this pen has a weight. If you put it on a table and it's there but it's not falling, the weight is counteracted by the contact force. All right, next to our electric force and magnetic force, um, you don't have to worry about these, just know them, that electric force is push or pull between electric charges, and magnetic force is push or pull between magnets. All right, students, for now your lecture was till here. We will discuss effects of friction, negative and positive effects, and all that later on. This lecture has already gone beyond 10 minutes, and let's keep these videos precise. If you don't understand anything, please ask me in the Google Classroom, and I'll be posting the notes there, and inshallah you'll be getting your next lecture tomorrow. So thank you so much for watching this, and I hope that you understand some of it, and I hope this works. Thank you so much. Bye.